Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, good afternoon.
We are so glad that all of you are able to join us today for this legislative training session. We have been doing Public Policy Day in Austin for as long as I could remember. And it's our opportunity during the legislative session years to inform and educate our state legislators on issues that impact minority business development. And we're finding the need to do more of that, not only in Austin, but at City Council and at the County Commissioner's Court. And one of the things that we've heard in our last session 2 years ago was that we needed to provide some training for those who may not be used to talking to elected officials and talking about legislative issues and communicating and understanding what that process looks like. I think as someone who has worked for elected officials, I sort of take it for granted. And so we thought that this would be a great opportunity to be able to leverage the expertise that Lindsay and Whitney will bring as they get ready to head up to the legislative session in January. So they only have 2 weeks before they don't sleep for 6 months. And so we wanted to be able to take the opportunity to record this session for those that will engage in this effort after the new year. And so allow us to be able to gain their expertise and have an initial training session that we could then share with others as we engage. So we're planning our Public Policy Day is scheduled for March 15th in Austin, Texas. We'll be taking a bus of minority businesses and corporate representatives to Austin to talk about issues that impact minority business development and our ability to grow, and for them to understand the impact that minority businesses have on the community in our state. So with that, I want to thank you in advance, Lindsay and Whitney, for taking your time. Thank you, Lenora, for putting your expertise and getting us the top-notch talent to be able to have today's session. And I thank all of you for attending today to get a better understanding of how you need to engage with elected officials, whether it's in Austin or at City Council, and whether it's Houston City Council, Fort Bend, and others. So it's important that we are school districts and making sure that our voices are heard. So thank you for attending.
Ingrid, if you are, and everyone else, if y'all are ready for us, we just want to welcome y'all to this. This is actually our office. We're coming to you live from our office. I'm Lindsay Munoz and Whitney Whitmire. We own Whitmire and Munoz. It's a lobby and public affairs firm here in Houston. But we, as Ingrid said, we are both going up to Austin for the legislative session here in a few weeks. So we will be leaving Houston for a number of months, but Lenora did call us to present.
Yeah, I just don't have too many on the call. If you guys could just briefly introduce yourself so that they know who they're talking to, I think that might be helpful for Lindsay and Whitney. So just your name, your company, and when I say brief, I mean really brief description of what you do. Let's start with Ed.
All right, happy Monday, everybody. My name is Ed Ryland. I'm president of Arvo Realty Advisors. We're a commercial real estate firm.
Thank you.
Okay, I am Nanette Ray. I also serve as the MBIC chair, TNR Advisors and Management Consultants. We do accounting and tax preparation.
I am Kathy Hall. I am the MBEIC vice chair, and I'm president of A Time for Marketing.
Hi, Barbara Charles here with Perfection Staffing. We provide executive search and temporary staffing talent. I'm also an ambassador for HMSDC.
Lenore Strolla Pullman. I'm with Navarro Insurance, and I sit on the Governmental Affairs Committee for HMSDC.
Hi, I'm Dr. Francis with Global Supplier, and we do construction.
Hi, I'm Kelly Burnett. I'm with Intervene K-12. We do online tutoring, assessments, English learner support.
Hi, my name is Sarah Tamilarison. What we do is actually analysis of existing infrastructure. For example, we'll detect like pipeline leaks, etc., just using the data and everything else that you have and predict it.
Hello, I'm Lloyd.
Hi, I'm Ed Middleton, seventh echelon. We're a professional services firm. I also help out with the legislative policy, public policy team.
And I'm Lloyd Gaucher. My company's LMG Technology Services. We provide IT recruiting and staffing, as well as software development and application support. I'm also a Harris County election judge and precinct chair.
Is that everyone? Did we miss anybody?
I didn't go. This is Christina Cox. I'm the director of events and owner of Morgan Falls Event Center in Alvin, Texas. We are a 6-acre indoor and outdoor temperature controlled property to where you can have any event, photo shoot, or commercial. And you can find us at themorganfalls.com.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Sharonda Murray with Metro, one of HMSDC's corporate partners. And I'm one of your advocates, small business advocates.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nina Cook. I am Director of Purchasing with the Harris Center for Mental Health and IDD.
Anybody else?
Yes, sorry. I'm Angela Randolph, founder of Stellar Ledgers. We provide financial accounting, consulting, and coaching services for small to medium-sized businesses. And I think I just saw you at Leadership Houston a few weeks ago, Lindsay. Nice to see you again.
You did. I can't get enough of the legislature, so yes.
Recording in progress.
I think we had a couple of people. Raven Watson, I don't think she introduced herself. Rachel, if you haven't, and Crystal Lachey, I did not hear those three.
Hi, I'm Rachel Bickham. I'm the CEO of Bickham Services Unlimited. We provide staffing and recruiting in the construction, IT, and administrative industries.
I think I heard Crystal. And who else in that did you say we were missing?
Raven, but I think Raven was having some audio issues because I saw her unmute, so.
Okay.
Yes, can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, great. I'll make it fast because I'm excited to hear Lindsay and Whitney. My name is Raven Watson. I'm the president of Outwork Personnel. We are a full service staffing provider. I'm eager to hear everything that you guys have to share. Thank you for joining us.
All right. Well, as you can see, we have businesses from all sorts of areas. And so just as diverse as our businesses are, so is what they do. And so there's a lot of issues that I know affect all businesses, taxes, regulations, and so forth. But we are really interested in understanding how we can leverage the HUB program and address some of the faults that might be with the HUB program and how it's implemented across different agencies and just how to communicate. So thank you all so much. And so we're going to turn the floor over to you.
Yeah, no, I thought we could kind of start just so y'all know a little bit about our background. So I actually started my career in the Texas legislature as a staffer for 3 sessions. and then worked 2 campaigns before coming over to Houston, and actually started with the Houston Association of Realtors. When we're talking about Advocacy Day, they have truly one of the largest advocacy days up at the Capitol. It's both a blessing and a curse because staffers will hide out and take back hallways when they have Realtor Lobby Day, just because of the large amount of realtors that come to the Capitol. Whitney and I actually met when we were both advocating on behalf of AT&T here in the Houston region, but obviously went up during the legislative session. And then I moved over to the Greater Houston Partnership and led their advocacy efforts for a few years before Whitney and I kicked off Whitmire and Munoz on January 1st of this year. Whitney, do you want to?
Sure. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's exciting to be with groups of people that want to be involved in the process. I always have different soapboxes about wanting people to be more informed and more engaged, because I just think that makes the state, the city, the county better for all of us if people are participating. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for being here. I have been in this world since 2006. I started my career at AT&T and kind of branched out from there. I've represented a number of different companies and organizations in front of the Texas legislature, and then also some at the county and city level, although at this point, Lindsay handles most of that for our firm. And I thought that I would just kind of start off, I don't know what everybody's knowledge is just of the state legislature. Here in Texas, we're really unique. We're one of just a handful of states that is considered a part-time Texas legislature, meaning that they only meet every other year for 140 days. The other states that do that are very small in comparison in terms of economies and population. So the fact that Texas is now the 10th largest economy in the world, and they still only meet every other year for 140 days, they have to do a budget for 2 years at a time. It makes the legislative session incredibly fast-paced and high stakes, because if something goes wrong or doesn't get passed, you have to wait a whole nother 2 years before you start that process over again. And that goes back to our Constitution, and I don't think it'll change anytime soon. With that said, we are completely Republican controlled. Both chambers, the House and the Senate, have a majority of Republicans, and all of the statewide offices are Republican as well. We're coming out of a redistricting cycle. So every 10 years after the census is done, they redraw the lines. That always leads to quite a few new members coming in. So we'll have 24 new House members and 4 new state senators. On the state Senate side, the senators, the 4 that are leaving, were all very high in seniority and had a lot of knowledge in their particular specialties. And so in my mind, there's a loss in knowledge for sure on the Senate side, and in some regards in the House side as well. So the legislative session always gets started on the second Tuesday of odd numbered years. And so this year that falls on January 10th. The first 60 days, they can only work on items that the governor has declared as emergency items. And so he does his State of the State speech in January, and he'll say what his emergency items are. And for the first 60 days, that's all that can be worked on. That also goes back to the Constitution and our framers wanting to keep the state government relatively small and weak at the time of our founding. And then March 10th is the bill filing deadline. So anything that hasn't been filed before that point cannot be filed. To take a step back, members are already filing bills. So that was allowed to start the week after the election. So even members that have not been sworn in yet can concurrently file bills that they're wanting to pass. And then that stops in March. And then the entire session is over on May 29th. And we'll get into the committee process and how to speak to members if you're in favor or against a certain bill. Next, I'll kick that over to Lindsay. Just that's the background of the overview of how things start.
And here, I will tell y'all, here in the Houston region, We really are only looking at, for the state representatives, we're only looking at 3 new representatives because the previous decided not to run again. One of them was State Representative Garnett Coleman, and we now have State Representative Jolanda Jones that won during a special election. So she's not a freshman, but she is a freshman to this specific legislative session. So this will be her first. We are also losing State Representative Dan Huberty and State Representative Jim Murphy. And they will be replaced by 2 Republicans in both of their districts. So from the Houston region, those are the state representatives. We're losing on the Senate side. Senator Larry Taylor, that was always a formidable force on education policy. And he is actually retiring as well. And former state representative from the Galveston area, Mays Middleton, will be taking that spot on the Senate side. So relatively speaking, we're dealing with a lot of the same players that y'all might have already engaged with in previous sessions, which helps with kind of just the relationship side of it. As Whitney said, as far as the first 60 days, they're doing a lot of the procedural work on getting, kind of getting the legislative session running. So committees are not, on day one, they are not assigned. You have to wait until roughly the 3rd week in February before the speaker will assign the committees to the different House members. And that goes by both, their own personal interests, their background, their knowledge, and then also seniority. And that's really a nice defining factor of, who kind of gets the top pick there. And then also just kind of the relationships with the current speaker. As Whitney said, the Republicans do have a majority on both the Senate and the House side. And on the House side, Speaker Dade Phelan, who is the current speaker, they just had the Republican caucus vote and they voted overwhelmingly to support him again. So they will have an election on the first day to elect the speaker. It is presumed that he will win once again and lead the House side. And then on the Senate side, we have Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick that will oversee the Senate side. We were talking about kind of the committee structure and the committees that y'all would be interested in. I think that, a lot of it depends on what bills end up getting filed that y'all have an interest in. You can go over to and kind of who to engage with as far as the elected officials. So when you have a bill of interest that it has been put on your radar of something that y'all would like to either advocate for or against, the first step is to always go and speak with the author of the bill. Figure out what the legislative intent is, if it hurts or helps. And then also, if it does help the industry, then provide both your industry knowledge of the subject, but then also provide kind of the resources and manpower to garner support across the state to bring it to the attention of other legislators. When you're talking about a specific bill, it's always good if you have them to have a constituent to be kind of the lead in that particular office. If you're going to an office to speak to a legislator, as we all know, they always love to hear from constituents, because not only do they care about what they're wanting, what their issues are, but they're also a voter in their district. And so they have a little extra incentive to listen there.
And it's very important to know who your state rep and state senator are and what committees they serve on, and meeting their staff is important, because as I was saying, it gets to be so fast and furious. A lot of the time you're dealing with staff more than you're dealing with them.
Mm-hmm. So kind of when you're talking about the time period that we're in, starting today and going to the beginning of session, that's your time to really start looking at what are some of the issues that you're interested in, what are bills that maybe you last legislative session you heard about, that either did or didn't pass. There are thousands of bills that are filed every session, and only a fraction of them actually pass. So you'll have legislators that intend to file or have already filed for that same piece of legislation this session. So if that is the case, then you want to go ahead and get that on your radar and be prepared to take that on March 15th as a priority issue for, for the group. The good news is by the time y'all get there on March 15th, the committees will have been assigned on both the House and the Senate. So you know the committee members that you need to be reaching out to where the bill will go through. I wanted to pull up a resource for y'all, and let me share my screen real quick. This is something that would be beneficial for everyone as you're moving through the legislative process to bookmark, and you can also save it on your phone as a resource. capitol.texas.gov. This is kind of your hub for figuring out and learning about what's going on during the legislative session. So as you can see, there are opportunities where you can look up a specific bill number. Maybe you don't necessarily know the bill number, but you know a subject that it's about. You can look for the text of a certain bill. We are going in, and I've done this many times before, we are going into the 88th regular session, so 88R in 2023. That make sure that is checked off, because I have gotten very confused before of putting the wrong session and going, where's the bill? So you're going to want to make sure that it's on the 88th regular session, and then you can type, whatever words that you would like. One of the things that I did want to point out to y'all.
I'm sorry. Let me ask a question, Whitney. Yeah. So for those that may not be as familiar, so can you talk about what the R means, what a regular session versus a special session, and what that means?
Sure. So the R means regular session. So when I was speaking earlier and I said, they meet every other year for 140 days, that is the regular session. Starts in January, ends in May. The governor can call a special session if an emergency happens or if they don't finish something that he or she wants to see done. So then that's when it would have an S by it. And so, for instance, last year, they actually ended up with 3 special sessions. And so that's why you have those numbers there.
So you can see 1, 2, and 3 here, because we had 3 special sessions in 2021.
And the special sessions are specifically to cover
whatever items the governor puts on it's called the call. So no other bills can be filed unless it's having to do with what he has called them back to the special session for. So it's a much smaller in scope session, and it's only for 30 days. If it doesn't get done in those 30 days, then he would have to call another one.
Yeah. If they get it done, special sessions can be 1 to 30 days. So if they come back and on day 1, they get it together and they do what the governor needs them to do and passes it out, then they can end before that 30 days, but it is a cutoff of 30 days. And they can stop at that 30 days and he can call the next one the day after. So they can go as many until the governor deems that the business of the state is done.
So I have a question. This is Nanette. So you mentioned earlier that the first 60 days is for the governor in terms of emergency items. So if we wanted to see what was included in the list of what he considered an emergency, would that still be under the 88 regular session, or would it be something different?
Yeah, so it will be under the 88th regular session. You can they provide that on the governor's website. Once he has his state of the state, they will upload what his priorities are, and we'll put it on the governor's website. So
usually where I will go, because they have explanation of each of them in kind of a concise way of what the governor's priorities are. Any extra?
Yeah, I mean, none of us know yet. We'll all know in January. And like I said, that's just what they can start working on in terms of legislative hearings, or in terms of any kind of votes on the floor. But all the members will be there those first 60 days, taking meetings, talking to people, their own members and their own constituents about the bills that they've already filed. It's just those bills can't move until after the first 60 days.
So when we're saying move, that means the bill will be taken and will be assigned to a committee. So each bill that comes through the legislative session needs to be assigned and vetted by a legislative committee. And so based on the topic of the bill, it will get assigned to a specific committee. And that's really where the vetting of the bills will happen. If there is of interest by anyone on this group that wants to take a leadership role in championing a certain bill that y'all have decided is a priority for you, or something that you want to work against, that is also an opportunity where you can sign up to testify for those bills in committees. So as you are putting, as you are getting your list of priority bills, and those are kind of starting to form on your side, and you're watching them as they go into their committees, either on the House side or the Senate side, bills can start on either side of.
Yeah, why don't we take that process like back
Yeah.
a step? So a state representative will file a bill, and then state senators will file bills. If a state representative has filed a bill, that bill will then be assigned by the speaker to which committee it's going to based on subject matter. And then once it's assigned to that committee, the chairman of that committee will set the bill for a hearing date. And that will all be on the notifications that you can get from this website. And then at that hearing, that is when public testimony is invited to come speak for and against the bill. And then depending on how the members of the committee feel about the bill, if they don't like it and they vote it down, the bill in theory is dead there. If it passes through committee, then it has to go to the entire House floor to get voted on. And it has to have a majority of favorable votes in the House. If it does, then it goes to the Senate side and the whole process starts over again. So then the lieutenant governor has to assign that House bill to the Senate committee that corresponds with it. And then there's a Senate hearing. And then if it passes that, it goes to the Senate. And then if the Senate passes it, then it would go to the governor for the governor to sign or veto it. The entire process would go in reverse if it was a Senate bill. If a senator filed it, the lieutenant governor assigns it to a committee, and then it goes through the same, just in the opposite order.
Which is one of the reasons that when we said there's so many bills that are filed, but very few actually end up getting passed, it's because they do have to go through such a long process of checks and balances before they can actually go to the governor for his signature. And even then, even if it goes through the legislative session and it gets to the governor's desk for a signature, he can veto it. We had a bill when I was at the Greater Houston Partnership that we worked very hard on. We were very excited about, and then the governor vetoed it. So it's not over till it's over.
I see Ed has his hand up. Ed, you had a question?
I do. Thank you. Thank you so much for the overview. It was very informative. Two things. So the process you walked through, I want to know if there was any type of one-page flow chart of that.
Yes.
Number two, and then the second point, when you talk about champions for initiatives or bills, is there a cadence, like best practice cadence that you follow when it's first drafted to submission to people who decide to attach to it or support to. And the final part about that, is there a follow-up schedule that's recommended to try to help influence your point of view? And if you need me to go back over, let me know. I know I said a lot.
Yeah. So let me show you on this website. Can everyone see the website as I'm sharing it?
Yes.
Great. So if you go to the home on this website, there's a lot of different resources that
the videos.
Yeah, oh, that's true. Well, we can.
Yeah.
So on this main page, you can find many of the answers to what you say. So find the list of the filed bills. So these are all the bills that have been filed thus far. When are they scheduled? What is the text of a bill? When is the committee hearing? So all of these things are options for you to be able to, find out about specific bill. This is in the legislative process. This walks you through exactly what Whitney was talking about. So you will see these are all the things, signed, vetoed by the governor, considered in the House or on the Senate floor. So these are the steps, Ed, to answer your questions. These are the steps that any bill will need to go through.
Thank you. I apologize. I was trying to say something, but were you showing something? And if I missed it, was it just me?
You missed it, but we can see it.
Don't worry about it. Okay, all right, no worries. I'm trying to
I'll
figure
show
out.
you. We'll get together later.
Okay, no problem.
Perfect. So Ed, on this main page, the capital.texas.gov, there is a section on the main page that says legislative process. And there is a link that says how to follow a bill. And that is the one that I was just referencing and showing to the group that will walk you through each step of where a bill will be and how it becomes, ultimately signed by the governor.
I see it now. Thank you.
Another feature, since we're just right here, that's right above that says legislative activity, and it says video broadcast. So once they kick off in January, if you click on those links, whatever's happening will be online. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, it will be filed and it will be online so that you can see what
well, not just the bill, but every day is streaming.
calendar.
Streaming, that's the word. I'm sorry, couldn't think of the word. Streaming. So both committee meetings and their activity on the floor. So if there's a bill you're interested in and you can't be in Austin, you can still watch it in the committee process and on the floor. And then also the calendars are right there, the meetings, all of that stuff is very helpful.
So this is a hub of just if you cannot be in Austin, but want to watch, or there's a specific bill that you have an interest in and you know that it's going to be up in that committee that day, and you want to keep it on like the nerd that Whitney and I are, and we keep it on all the time during the legislative session, you can have that committee meeting on your computer, or you can have the House floor. If they're debating a bill and you want to watch, those are the links right there that can get you to that. So I wanted to point out to y'all, and I'm going to actually pull it up from last legislative session because it has more of the steps in it that y'all will want to see. And Ed, to your point about like, where do you see, what the status of a bill is? Where do you see the different, steps that the bill is going in if you have an interest? One of the bills that was filed last legislative session was Senate Bill 678, and it amends the current law relating to the creation of the Small Business Disaster Recovery Loan Program. So historically, when a disaster, either natural or man-made, hits, there's a period of time, and I'm sure y'all are very familiar with this, between when the disaster hits and when the federal dollars start filtering down. in those time periods, as y'all know, there's a lot of things that still need to be paid. There are bills, there are employee salaries that need to be paid. And there's this lull time that is between, when the disaster hits to when the federal money can start coming down, that really can be a make it or break it for a lot of small businesses. So last legislative session, Senator Carol Alvarado from the Houston region filed a bill that would address that. So it creates the Small Business Disaster Recovery Loan Program. A key thing to know about this, and we'll talk about this a little bit in a while, is that this just created the structure for the loan program. It still needs to be funded. So although we have it, it does not have money in it right now. So what I'm going to do is pull up on here, typing in 678, and this is the bill that she filed from last session. Oops, excuse me, bill number. And you push go. So if y'all are looking at the screen, you can see everything that happened on this bill last legislative session. You can see who filed the bill, if there was any support on the bill, co-authors. So the co-authors will be on whatever side. If it's a Senate member that authored it, the co-authors would be listed here under her. And then you've got on sponsors. So these are state representatives. So these are the supporters over on the Senate, on the House side. So you can see everything and all the actions that happened for Senate Bill 678 last session, creating the Small Business Disaster Recovery Loan Program from its infancy when it was originally filed to when it was signed by the governor on June 16th of last year. So this is really going to be, once you have a bill number and once you have something that you want to follow, this will give you the information that you need. So you'll see that it was first filed on February 12th of last legislative session. And as you go up from there, you can see when it was scheduled for a public hearing. And when it's scheduled for a public hearing, that means that it's in committee. It's going to be heard in the committee. And the committee that it was referred to was Finance. So if you click on there, you can see exactly, what the details are of what happened for that. For the bill. So this will be a great kind of dashboard on any pieces of legislation that you're interested in to see the status of any of those bills.
And if you sign up for alerts on this website, anytime something is added on here, you'll get an email saying, or a text, however you set it up, saying, so this happened to this bill number or whatever.
So if any of y'all would like to sign up for alerts, you can click this button that says add to bill list. So that means that you want Senate Bill 678, you want to watch it. You want to see when it get alerted when it goes into committee or when it gets voted on the House floor. So you will click on this add to bill list and it will allow you to set up an account through this Texas Legislature online. And it will add this bill to the list of the bills that you want to watch during session, that you want to keep tabs on where they are. Is that all making sense, or are there follow-up questions on that? I know we're going quickly.
No, I think that it's great.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Lindsay, question. S stands for Senate and H stands for House. Is that correct?
Correct.
The other thing is, if this bill passes, it doesn't need to have a partnership in the House or vice versa?
It does. So for instance, Senate Bill 678 by Alvarado, she started it on the Senate side, but it went over to the House. Oh, I'm sorry, you're asking about a companion bill. So yes, there are some bills that
They're identical.
They're identical bills, but because it goes so quickly during a legislative session, there are some bills that if Whitney's on the Senate side and I'm on the House side, we'll file the exact same bill. And whichever one gets traction quicker is the one that we'll run with. So it's usually.
So let me ask, is that a best practice? For the first time, we have been working on drafting our first sort of piece of legislation. We've talked to Senator Miles about filing it based on a bill that he filed last year that we wanted to, we had worked on tweaking it. It didn't really get any traction. And so we are still working on it now, but plan to get it to them and get it to Ledge Council and get it drafted in legislative language.
Great.
And so would you say a best practice is to find a House sponsor as well and file it on both sides, like you said, and see which one will actually make it over? Because to me, it sounds like from what you've explained, we really have about, I would say, a good 45 days for bills to truly make it through the process, since it ends at the end of May. So if you can't really, you know, bills can be filed and, you know, they put the hold on where they're going to assign them for that March deadline or that March date where they could then send it to committee. So then you have really from March and April to really try to get the bills done, because after, by the end of April, those last 30 days, if you haven't crossed, you know, to the other chamber, the likelihood of the bill making it through gets smaller and smaller, right? So you really only have that short 45 to 60 maybe days in order to get the bills through, is what it sounds like to me.
100%.
I would always have a companion bill. Just, it doesn't hurt anything and it's upping your chances of getting across the finish line. And if you're interested in that, the quicker you can get it, you know, a sponsor and filed, the better.
And so what about the idea of taking pieces of that legislation, because the likelihood or as much stuff as they have on their plate might not make it. One of the thoughts we had, we formed a public policy task force, and we're kind of looking at those things to say, are there specific pieces that we think is really important that maybe we want to have pulled out and created in a draft of an amendment or a rider to appropriations or something where we can try to stick it somewhere so that if we can't get the whole enchilada, that we might be able to get little snippets somewhere here or there to get those components through. So being really specific about, you know, if we had it, what would be the most important one or two pieces that we would want to pull from that and arm maybe the Houston delegation with, or certain legislators on both sides with, in order to do that. Is that something that would be recommended for us to pursue?
Oh yes, you need backup plan after backup plan after backup plan, because things can go awry for no fault of anybody's. So I can't count how many times that I was working on a bill that became an amendment and then ended up making it through. There's a lot of negotiating at the end, like, I'll hear this bill if you put this amendment on and da, da, da. So being as prepared as you can for as many avenues as possible is always going to be the best course of action.
And I've got a question. This is Nanette. In terms of best practices, in addition to the companion bill, sounds like what I'm hearing you say, this is a lot of work. So the heavy lifting is usually done during the even years in preparation for this. Like trying to write a bill now, is that, what would you recommend in terms of best strategies?
So, I mean, obviously, the more time that you have to ramp up to it and really start raising awareness of either an issue or a bill, the better. But that being said, if it's filed, you know, after the session starts, that in no way means that it won't, you know, make its way through the legislative process. I think one of the biggest things that would be on, you know, in your favor, especially for this legislative session, is one,
You need to make sure that you find those members, so either a senator or a House member or both
Preferably.
that believe in your bill.
Yeah.
They're not just
How
taking.
important is it to them to get it through?
Yeah, so because at the end of the day, they're going to be in conversations, they're going to be in rooms that you just won't have access to. And so you want to make sure that those that take your bills or take your issues and champion it for a specific bill or an amendment to make sure that it's put on to, another bill, you want to make sure that they have it on their radar and they are just as excited and as passionate about that issue as you are. It's because, again, they're going to be in meetings that you just won't have access to. And you want to make sure that that's on their radar as a priority. And as Whitney said, there are negotiations that go in at the end. We'll do this, I'll put this in here if you hear my bill. If that's a priority for the member that you are, asking to run with this bill, then you want that to be a priority when those negotiations are going on as well.
The members and their staff, this late in the game, if you don't already have a relationship with a member, it would be hard to get to know them really well, but you still have plenty of time to get to know the staff and talk to the staff. And so bringing people to talk about the bill that are from the district or from organizations that are important to the member and the staff can also go a long way.
So with our focus being around, minority small business owners, I would assume we want to focus on the number of businesses impacted by this legislation, or the number of their constituents that would be impacted by this legislation, or dollars, or what is the best way to get them to support something that you're wanting them to support?
Honestly, it can be a mixture of anything. It depends on the member. Some are motivated more by the heart, some are motivated more by the dollars. And so I think depending on what the legislation is, that finding those people that can help tell the story and put numbers to it is very beneficial. Again, when I was at the Greater Houston Partnership, we would bring the facts, we would bring the statistics, we would bring the data to it, but then we'd find those partners that can speak about the impact that bill would have on them. This Senate Bill 678, it started with a small business here in the Houston region, Three Brothers Bakery. Three Brothers Bakery had been hit by flooding because of hurricanes, I think 4 or 5 times. And the owner said, enough's enough. I need to get my employees back in and paying them and getting resources so that we can build back after this. And so this piece of legislation that y'all are seeing on my screen actually started with a small business owner here in Houston, but she came with both facts and then also came with that personal story to supplement those facts of here is what the impact looks like to your constituent.
And I would say that goes for all levels of government and offices. I know you mentioned Houston, Harris County, and other ones around the region. So I think that's in line with every level that you're trying to influence.
So I wanted to show y'all this bill from last legislative session so that you could see the entire process that it goes through and all the boxes that it has to check. But I did want to point out, if y'all don't already know about it, for this session, a bill that has already been filed by a local state representative Jarvis Johnson. And actually, before I go, if y'all will look on the co-author list here, Whitney said early in the conversation that we are a Republican-dominated legislature, and that is true. A lot of the bills and those that play the game during session know
that by and large, if you want to get support on both sides of the chamber, or both sides of both the House and the Senate side, you need some Republicans on there if you were a Democrat filing this bill. So you'll see that Alvarado might be the author of it, but there's Schwartner, there's Huffman. I think those are the only two on there. Schwartner and Huffman, both Republicans. Huffman is now going to be the chair of finance, or is the chair of finance now. And then on the House side, you've got Button is a Republican, Cecil Bell is a Republican. So in order to play that game, which it is, sadly, it is, you need to know.
Well, I mean, if it has no Republican support, it's not going to pass because there's not enough Democrats to, even if you had every single Democrat in the whole legislature vote for it, you don't have enough votes. So you've got to find a way to get crossover support if you're a Democrat, or if it's a Democrat that's carrying your bill. It's also, when we're strategizing, a lot of times if we have a Democrat in the House filing it, then we'll try to get a Republican in the Senate or vice versa. So that's just the partisan world that we're dealing with.
Yeah. So the bill that I was telling you about that has been filed for this legislative session is House Bill, and you can do HB 243. And that is by State Representative Jarvis Johnson. This is relating to the historically underutilized business task force. So this is creating a task force, a hub task force. And I wanted to put this on y'all's radar. You can see by this page, it's very much in its infancy. It's been filed and that's it. But I wanted to put this on the radar so that y'all could follow it. If you go up here on the tabs and you go to text, you can click on the text and you can read exactly what the authors has written, what the bill is written as. So that's something that I think would be of interest to y'all. And I think, you know, when you're talking about champions, it's obvious that State Representative Jarvis Johnson has already filed with the intention of, you know, getting a bill to go through the legislative process. Thank you for that. We'll definitely follow that one. The one other question I have, because now this is not necessarily about bills, but with the infrastructure dollars that are coming to the state, we know that those dollars are going to be allocated at the state level. How does the governor decide which departments that's going to go to? So that actually will go through the Senate Finance or the House Appropriations. So the only bills that have to be passed constitutionally, Whitney is a professor and she knows all this stuff, so I'm looking at her to make sure. No, the only bills that have to be passed every session
is the budget.
Is the budget. So that, as long as they get that done, they can check the box. So all of that federal funding will come down through those committees and through this.
They'll appropriate it.
They'll appropriate it.
So and what were those committees again? The Finance Committee?
Senate Finance, and the senator actually is from this region. That is the finance chair. Her name's Joan Huffman. And then on the House side, it's the House Appropriations, and the chair of that is Greg Bonin, and he's from the Friendswood area.
So we've got Houston region members on both committees.
Yeah. Armando Wally, State Representative Armando Wally is on the Appropriations Committee. Ann Johnson, State Representative Ann Johnson. Now we're telling y'all all this right now, knowing that they still have to assign. This was from last legislative session.
There could be changes in the new session.
So any recommendations for us, because a large part of that spending, it's our understanding, needs to be minority spend. Any recommendations from you in terms of a strategy for us as minority business owners?
So do you mean the federal money has stipulations on it that says it has to be spent?
Yes, that was our understanding, that some portions of it has to be spent with minority businesses.
I'm trying to think if it's actually within the legislation or if it's within the rulemaking for the comptroller. If it is through a legislative process and through the budget, then if y'all are looking at my screen over here on the left on the home page, and then you go over here on the left, you have both on the House and you have the Senate. And the House, you have committees. So if you click on that, well, they're not playing nicely. It says the House committees have not been assigned, but they will have a list of all the House committees. So when they get assigned, when we hear that the budget or any of the committees have been assigned, it would be my recommendation to start with the Greater Houston area delegation or those that you have relationships with that sit on those two committees and go in and talk to them about the allocation within the budget for hub businesses.
Need to look into that because I actually don't know how that works. I mean, because if it's federal money and the feds have put those requirements on it, then in order to spend the money, they have to abide by those requirements. I'm just unsure what that looks like once it's allocated out, but I'm happy to look into that for y'all.
Yeah, we would appreciate that because it's our understanding that Biden has decided that a certain amount of that has to be spent with what they consider minority businesses or SBE.
Yeah, I'm sure that sounds right. I just am wondering how the state then makes sure that happens. That's what I've got to.
Well, and also know that because of the size of both City of Houston and Harris County, there are direct allocations from the federal government that come straight to Houston and Harris County and don't go through the state. So depending on those federal guidelines, and if they do have to go through the state, it is possible that they can come directly to City of Houston and Harris County.
And then the other thing we were talking about is how are the different state agencies going to report out in terms of how they record that spend? So that at the end of the day, we're comparing apples to apples and not one department is doing it one way, another department is doing it another way. So any recommendations on that?
That's a harder question because the state agencies are so siloed.
I mean, they get their line item budgets from the state.
So each one of the agencies during the interim have to go in and make their case for funding for the state.
And they go before the finance committee and the appropriations committee, and they have to go line by line to talk about and justify their asks. So it's somewhat transparent from that point of view. Once they get the money and they're contracting out, I'm not entirely sure what the visibility is on that.
Yeah, we'd have to look at that because I don't know what the visibility is once they have that money.
I mean, they have to abide by, whatever the money requirements were. I just don't know. I'd have to ask some more agency focused people. But if you want to email us after this, any follow-up questions that we don't know the exact answer to, we're happy to find out. If we don't know it, we know someone that knows it. So
thank you guys.
And I know we're over time, but if there are specific questions, I know that one of the things that Lenora had asked as far as just kind of what are the hot topics going into this legislative session,
As Whitney said earlier, the governor has not given his emergency items or his priorities for the legislative session. But we do know, just in talking to people, allocations for school safety, property tax relief, border security funding.
All the things you heard about during the campaign.
All the things you heard about during the campaign. They're going back and trying to make the campaign promises
The state does have an unprecedented surplus, $27 billion. There are lots of agencies and organizations and people that want that money. So a lot of members are saying it could be one of the most difficult because trying to figure out the best use of those dollars will be a challenge to get everybody to agree on.
Yeah, we've heard higher education institutions are looking for money, and they have a $1 billion ask, and that's just for one higher education system. And when you're dealing with a total of 27 billion in the general revenue fund, and one educational institution is asking for 1 billion of that, and then multiply that across, a 27 surplus. You multiply that by, across the state of Texas, everybody wants a piece of the pie. So it's a lot of money, and it's a lot of hands in the cookie jar wanting it. It'll be great. Is there anything that we didn't go over? I think when you're talking about your day on March 15th, a few of the things to keep in mind is, one, if you're going into an office, if there is a constituent that's in your group for that legislator, make sure to highlight, if that person is not necessarily the speaker for the group, make sure to highlight that you do have a constituent there with you. I think that because it moves at such a fast pace, and the offices are getting such an influx of people coming in and asking for things, that if you don't have a one-pager, a concise one-pager, and a leave behind, then that's a missed opportunity. Don't make it longer than a one-pager because they won't read it. They don't have the time. Make those relationships, as Whitney said, with the staff members, because at the end of the day, when the members are down on the floor or they're in committee and you need information, or you need to say, tell them information, you're going to want to have relationships with those staff members in those offices. So make sure that those are, key relationships that you develop either now, starting now, or as you lead up to that March 15th engagement. And then lastly, I would say that as much as possible, the offices that you go into, that you either have a dedicated script that everybody is singing from the same song, or that you have a key person that will lead in all of the offices with the messaging, because you want to make sure that all of the members that are hearing from y'all are hearing a consistent message. So those are just kind of my, Realtor Lobby Day, leftover Realtor Lobby Day tips, because there is an influx of individuals that want their time, that want their attention, that want their enthusiasm. And so you want to make sure that y'all are concise, that you take advantage of the time. If it's longer than 15 minutes, not gonna stick. So make sure that you'll have everything and your ducks in a row so that you can go in with a consistent and impactful message when you go in there.
Thank you so much, ladies, for those key pointers. Those were awesome. Do we have any additional questions for Lindsay and Whitney before they finish, going throughout the rest of their day? None?
Yep. I have a question.
Yes. Hi. I'm gonna actually have to leave it to Lindsay because I've got to get to my son's school for a teacher meeting, but I'm sure she will leave it in her capable hands. It was wonderful to be with you all today, and feel free to email us also for any follow-ups.
Hi, Lindsay. This is Dr. Francis. I have a question about the House Bill 243.
Yes.
What does that look like? You said it was to create a hub task force. So what does that look like? Can you describe that bill, please? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So the task force within the bill, it lays out what members would serve on the task force. So as Representative Johnson has laid it out, there are members that are hub businesses that will serve on the task force that will be assigned or be nominated by the key leadership in the state. So a lot of the times when you're dealing with task force, the governor will nominate somebody and appropriate somebody to serve on the task force. The lieutenant governor will get somebody that they get to nominate, and then the speaker will get to nominate one. And so you'll have those to start with, and then the others are a mixture of business or you might have somebody that serves on the comptrollers in the comptroller's office that oversees hub activities. And so a lot of the times when you're setting up a task force in a piece of legislation, it's to study best practices of the programs and make sure that there's allocations and there's a balance in what is currently happening, and make kind of recommendations for what improvements to a certain policy or a certain practice can be moving forward. So if this bill, House Bill 243, were to pass the legislative session and get signed by the governor, this task force would be set up after the bill is signed. So 9 times out of 10, bills will go into, if they're signed by the governor, they'll be enacted on September 1st of that year. So it would be September 1st of 23. And that's when the members of the task force will start being asked, and they'll get the task force together. This particular bill, I looked at it, it looks like they meet quarterly. The task force will meet quarterly, and then they will come before the legislature with their recommendations prior to next session. So again, working on kind of best practices for hub activity in the state of Texas. So what are the outreach efforts, the policies, the bidding processes? Are they fair? Evaluate the amount of access to contracting opportunities available. Those are kind of the subject matters that the task force will review, and then they will give recommendations prior to next session.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Lindsay, I'm sorry. I just wanted to reconfirm, when the bill, maybe House bill or Senate bill, have a low number like 1, 2, or 3, it is something directly coming from the governor, and it will probably pass, like House Bill 1.
Yes. So House Bill and Senate Bill 1, always going to be the budgets. Always will be the budgets. As a legislative session progresses, Lenora, you are 100% correct. The lower numbers will be allocated to those bills that the governor, the lieutenant governor, or the speaker all deem as priority bills for themselves. So usually it's reserved as the first, I think, 20 bills of a legislative session. So for instance, last legislative session, as they progressed and we had the winter storm, they actually ended up allocating some of those lower numbers to bills that dealt with the grid and grid reliability and grid enhancements. And so they don't necessarily have to all be, from day one known, but they'll be brought up, and they only can be assigned by the leadership, either the speaker, lieutenant governor, or the governor. And that being said, all the other bills, it's truly of when you get in line, when you file that bill. So you'll have bills that are lower. It's because they filed it on the second day of bill filing. So the week after Thanksgiving, they had something that either they wanted to refile from last session, or they wanted to, get a jump on it this session is something that there is a priority for them, then they'll file that.
Another thing with when we cannot meet with the representative, who is the best person for us to sometimes even meet better than the representative?
Yeah, honestly, it's so true. So each office will have, on the House side, each office will have a legislative director, or there should be. There's a little bit of a staffing shortage as we're all experiencing, but each office should have a legislative director. If the member is not available, I would ask for the legislative director. They're the ones that will highlight things for the member. If there's something, every staffer knows what their members' priorities are. When I say member, either a Texas House member or a Senate member. Every staffer knows the priorities and interests of their member that they serve as a staff for. So if there's something that comes across their desk, or there's a meeting that they take that they know this would align with the priorities of that member, then they will take it to their boss. So if you cannot meet with the member themselves, ask for the legislative director. You can ask for the chief of staff. On the Senate side, every Senate office will also have subject matter experts. So if you go into a Senate office and ask for their policy analyst that oversees economic development, then they will pull a specific member of their staff that oversees that. And they'll break them down by subject matters. So you can go, and I think you can see on the bills that there's the list of the different subjects depending on the bill of what subject is covered. You go ask for that specific staffer that oversees business or business and commerce or economic development. And so that is the person that you want to talk to in the Senate side.
And one last question, just for edification, most of my questions is that Houston is very unique because not only do we have Dean of the House, but we also have Dean of the Senate. And for, I guess, educating other people on there, what does that mean, especially when it comes being Dean of the House or the Senate?
Yeah, so Dean of the House or Dean of the Senate is the longest serving member of that chamber. So for the state Senate, that is State Senator John Whitmire. He is the longest serving senator that we have at the state of Texas. He is going into his 40th year of service in the Senate. On the House side, similarly, it's the longest serving House member. We are very blessed to have State Representative Symphonia Thompson serve in that capacity. Not far behind her is Harold Dutton. And that, when we're talking about what does that mean, it means that similar to what we talked about earlier is, committees are chosen by the interest and the expertise of the member. It's also chosen by their seniority. And so especially when you have a Republican-led legislature and you have the Dean of the House and the Dean of the Senate that are both Democrats, that gets you seniority with selection of committees. So for instance, last legislative session and for a number of sessions, Senator John Whitmire has been the chair of criminal jurisprudence on the Senate side. Similarly, Representative Symphonia Thompson has been able to choose hers. She chose actually the very powerful licensing committee last legislative session. In previous sessions, she wanted to chair public health committee. And so it allows them to have seniority when it comes to which priorities and issues that they want to lead on. So yes, great question, Lenora, and it does make a difference. We have some other members because there has been such high turnover in the recent years. We have some other members here in the Greater Houston region that serve in very powerful positions. State Representative Ana Hernandez, she is the Vice Chair of State Affairs. Very powerful. When we're talking about the grid last legislative session, that goes within the State Affairs Committee that Ana Hernandez from here in the Houston region oversees. Or when we're talking about the only bill that passes during session is the budget, you have State Representative Armando Wally, who is serving in the capacity of not only being a chair of a subcommittee on the Appropriations Committee, but also one of the Democrats, which in a Republican-held state house is almost unheard of to have a Democrat in the conference committee. And the conference committee is basically when you have a bill on the House and a bill on the Senate, and you have two different versions of that. So you have the House budget and what they want, and the Senate budget and what they want. You have a conference committee where they appoint members from each chamber onto this committee, and they go into a room and they hash it out. And State Representative Armando Wally was a Democrat on a Republican-held House to serve on that conference committee and make final decisions about our budget. So we have some wonderful representation from here in the Houston region.
Thank you so much for that. So out of respect for both Lindsay and Whitney's time, we're just going to tell them thank you again. It was awesome. Thank you so much. Lenore, thank you for bringing them on. We appreciate it and all the planning that the committee has done. So we will follow up with Lindsay and Whitney's contact information. So I've already sent them the email in regards to what contact information they'd like us to share. So if you have any additional questions, you'll be able to email and contact them based on the information they provide us. So we just like to thank you all for attending, and you guys and ladies have an awesome rest of your day. And if I don't see you, or if HMSDC doesn't see you before then, have a wonderful, wonderful holiday. Thanks so much, guys.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Happy holidays. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Happy